She fills every arena she walks into. Tickets that used to sit at $12 now sell out in minutes, and scalpers outside Gainbridge Fieldhouse are asking for triple, sometimes quadruple, the face value. She is the reason your mom knows what a Logo 3 is. She is the reason little girls in Indiana are begging their parents for a number 22 jersey. She is, by almost every measure that matters, the single biggest draw in women's basketball. So when the All-Star voting numbers dropped, nobody expected what they saw. Caitlin Clark was not in the top 10. Read that again because it does not sound real the first time. The player who broke television ratings records at Iowa. The player who turned a mid-market WNBA franchise into the hottest ticket in American sports. The player whose face is on billboards, cereal boxes, and the cover of magazines. Left out. Not top 5, not top 10. Gone from the list entirely. Within minutes, social media caught fire. Fans were confused, then annoyed, then downright angry. Analysts who cover this league every single day started asking the same question out loud, on air, without any hesitation. How does this happen? Stick with me, because we are about to walk through exactly how a voting snub like this becomes possible, who benefits from it, and why the anger you are feeling right now might just be the most honest reaction in all of sports this week. But first, to understand why this snub cuts so deep, we need to rewind and look at exactly how much this one player has changed the entire landscape of the WNBA. Before we get into the snub itself, let's set the stage. 2 years ago, women's college basketball was a niche product on cable television, watched by die-hard fans and not much else. Then a skinny point guard from Iowa started pulling up from 30 feet with a look on her face like she had already made the shot before it left her hand. Ratings exploded. National championship games drew more eyes than most NBA playoff broadcasts. Writers started calling it the Clark effect, and it was not an exaggeration. She carried that momentum straight into the pros. In her rookie season, she became the fastest player in league history to reach 200 career three-pointers. She broke the rookie assist record. She did it while playing through injuries, technical fouls, hard fouls, and a level of physical contact that no rookie in recent memory has had to absorb. And through every bit of it, attendance kept climbing, television deals kept expanding, and franchises across the country kept scheduling their biggest promotional nights around whenever the fever came to town. Just weeks ago, she dropped 45 points and 10 assists in a single game against Seattle. 45 and 10. Nobody in WNBA history had ever put together a stat line like that. Not a single player, rookie or veteran, had ever crossed 40 points and 10 assists in the same night. She did it in her second professional season, coming off a back injury that had already cost her time on the court. So when you put all of that side by side, the ratings, the sold-out arenas, the record-breaking box scores, the cultural impact that stretches far beyond basketball, and then you place it next to a voting result that leaves her outside the top 10, the numbers simply do not add up. With everything she has brought to this league in less than 2 years, the real question is not why she was left off that list. The real question is who decided this and why. So let's actually dig into how this vote works, because the mechanics matter here. All-Star voting in the WNBA is not one single popularity contest. It is split into 3 separate buckets. Fan voting counts for 50% of the total. Then there is a media vote made up of journalists and broadcasters who cover the league. And finally, there is a player vote where current WNBA players rank each other. Fan voting is usually where Clark dominates, and this year was no different in terms of raw fan numbers. But when you blend all 3 categories together, cracks start to show. The media vote and the player vote carry real weight, and in those 2 categories specifically, her name did not crack the top tier. Now, on paper, that is not automatically suspicious. Media members and players are grading on different criteria. They are looking at efficiency, defensive impact, minutes played, and how a player affects winning on a nightly basis, not just jersey sales or ticket demand. If you strip away the emotion for a second, a case can technically be built using pure box score numbers. But here is where it gets messy. Multiple respected voices in basketball media pushed back almost immediately. One well-known ESPN analyst called the result flat-out egregious, a word you do not hear thrown around lightly when talking about an official league process. That is not some random account on social media. That is someone whose entire job is analyzing this league at the highest level, going on record to say the result does not reflect reality. So we have two conflicting stories running at the exact same time. On one side, a technical explanation about weighted voting categories. On the other side, some of the most credible basketball minds in the country openly saying the outcome makes no sense. That gap right there is the real story. But the numbers are only half of this. To really understand what happened, we have to look at the reaction that followed, because that is where this entire situation stopped being a stats debate and turned into something much bigger. The second those voting results went public, the internet did not just react, it erupted. Timelines filled up instantly. Fans flooded comment sections underneath every WNBA post, demanding explanations. Highlight clips of her 45-point game started recirculating with captions asking how a player putting up numbers like that could possibly be outside the top 10 of anything. It was not a quiet grumble. It was a full-blown, coast-to-coast wave of frustration. And this did not happen in a vacuum. This snub landed right in the middle of a season that has already been filled with tension around how Clark is treated on the court. Just weeks earlier, she was left visibly limping after a hard foul that officials never called, and she did not hold back afterward, telling reporters flatly that the referees can't miss a call like that. That single incident reignited a conversation that has been simmering all year about physicality, about officiating, about whether the most marketable player in the league is getting the same protection every other star receives. Layer on top of that a public war of words involving basketball legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who suggested she is not the true face of the WNBA, a comment that sports media personality Dave Portnoy fired back at hard, accusing critics of letting jealousy cloud their judgment. Now, stack the technical foul situation on top of all of it. She is sitting dangerously close to an automatic one-game suspension, something that could sideline her during a critical playoff push, and when asked directly if she planned to soften her game to avoid it, her answer was a simple no. It looks like the latest chapter in a much longer pattern, though see, a pattern where the biggest star in the sport keeps finding herself on the wrong end of decisions made by people who are not fans in the stands. But underneath all that anger, there is a bigger question that almost nobody wants to say out loud, and it is the one that actually explains everything we just walked through. Here is the uncomfortable truth hiding underneath the outrage. This was never really about a voting formula. Look closer, and you start to see the outline of something bigger. Every professional sports league has an old guard, players who built the product with their bodies for a decade before anyone outside the sport was paying attention, and every one of those leagues eventually faces the same reckoning when a new face arrives and pulls in an audience the veterans never had access to. That tension is not unique to basketball, and it is not new. It happened when younger stars entered other leagues and instantly overshadowed players who had spent years earning their status the hard way. Some of that friction is human nature. Nobody wants to feel replaced. Nobody wants to watch someone else's face end up on billboards for a game they gave their body to for years. Media and player voting blocks are made up of exactly those people, veterans who lived through the years before the cameras showed up, and analysts who built relationships and reputations covering a version of this league that existed long before this current wave of attention. It would be naive to pretend that history and those relationships carry zero influence when ballots get filled out. Add to that the very real physical toll this season has already put on her body, injuries that limited her minutes, games missed entirely, a stat line that, while still historic, was not the full, uninterrupted workload some voters may have wanted to see before ranking her at the very top. None of that fully explains a top 10 snub on its own. But together it paints a much more honest picture than a simple math error. This is not a story about broken software or a miscount. It is a story about a sport in transition, an old order adjusting to a new reality, and a voting system that was never built to move as fast as the player at the center of it. And that leads us to the only question that actually matters now. Does she get the recognition she has clearly earned, or does the system keep her waiting? But this is not the end of the story. All-Star rosters are not locked in stone the moment voting closes. Injury replacements happen, coaches make selections, commissioner discretion exists for exactly these kinds of situations, and league officials have stepped in before to correct outcomes that clearly did not match what fans and analysts were watching every single night. More importantly than any single roster spot, though, is this. A player's legacy was never going to be decided by one voting category buried inside a press release. Her legacy is being written every single night in sold-out arenas, in record-setting box scores, in the eyes of a new generation of kids who now know what a Logo 3 looks like because they watched her hit one live. Snubs fade. Headlines get replaced by next week's headlines. But attendance records, television numbers, and 45-point nights with 10 assists attached to them, those stay in the books forever, and no voting block can erase them. So here is the real takeaway. This story was never really about a list. It was about what happens when the sport itself hits a turning point, and the people running the old systems are still catching up to what the fans already know. If you think this snub was as ridiculous as it looked, drop a comment below and tell me exactly where you think this goes next. And if you want to be here for whatever comes out of this in the next few days, make sure you are subscribed, because this story is nowhere near finished.